Hello, I'm Toycat and welcome back to a second channel travel video. So over the years, I have taken hundreds of flights to over 40 countries, over 200 cities, flights ranging from 40 minutes to 17 hours, ranging from economy to premium economy. I've flown business a few times, I've flown first class internationally that one time. There's all these different flights that I've taken, and over them, I always learn a little something that helps me out for next time. And in some cases, I learn the worst way by doing something wrong. I learn by doing something which can destroy my day and has sometimes destroyed my month even, and because of this, I wish I could go back in time and tell past me all the things I've learned from all these flights. I wish there was a thing that I could, go back in time and be like, hey, don't make these mistakes, but sadly, as we all know, time is linear, I can't do that, but what I can do is I can tell you the advice that hopefully prevents some of you from making the same mistakes I have made and hopefully improve your traveling experience. So that's what we're doing today. First of all though, this is sponsored by Skillshare. If you don't know, in the education space, it's really cool when you get sponsored by Skillshare. It's like a sign you've made it. So we'll talk about that later, we'll go back into that. But for now, just know all of my opinions in this video are not anything related to that, because this is a travel video, and I want to prove that by doing a little bit of show and tell, and by slating a product really hard, because I have right here a suitcase. So this suitcase is from Bravo. I would just say don't buy from them as a whole, but in general, don't buy cheap luggage. Don't cheap out on your luggage, because if you do, this was $99 by the way, which in my opinion is not cheap, but I bought this in America literally 3 weeks ago, and you spot anything wrong with it. I mean, besides it's like filthy because I was in Canada. There is a wheel missing. The wheel got like, the wheel fell off behind an immigration checkpoint, so I literally could not go back and get it, and having 3 wheels in a 4-wheel suitcase is really bad by itself. It really destroyed my ability to go through the snow in Canada, and that's part of why it's so messy, and like it made my life a lot harder than it needed to be, first of all. So okay, pro tip, good luggage means you won't have that whole awful thing, but then the zip started breaking. As soon as the zip starts going awful, you know your stuff is now unsafe, and then this thing started not working, and then also there's a lock on it. The lock just stopped working after 3 uses. This is the biggest dud of a luggage I have ever bought, and one, my pro tip would be don't buy from Bravo apparently, but two, don't cheap out on your luggage. You might think like, I'm only going to one place of this, what's the worst that can do? But the rule of buy it nice or buy it twice really does apply to luggage too, because the big brands, for instance, Away, Samsung, etc., when you buy one of those things, it'll probably last longer than you. You'll die, the luggage will last with you, and my pro tip here is like, you don't have to spend hundreds on your luggage, just buy a nice backpack, or buy one that has lasted multiple people a lot of time. Don't buy something in a store, especially if you can't price compare online, because buying luggage physically always costs more. Buying luggage physically sometimes ends up with situations like this mess, which I just hate so much. It's awful. It's a real problem, and yeah, long story short, don't buy your luggage physically, and if you do buy it, make sure it's from a brand that you can trust, and like check the reviews, because a bad piece of luggage, a destroyed piece of luggage, will destroy your holiday and or trip too. So yeah, invest in good luggage, or at least be careful when doing it, because you might not think there's such thing as bad luggage, but there totally is, and it ruined so many of my days. Like, trying to lug that around in the snow that's like 6 inches thick was a real problem that you might not appreciate. So next up here, we've got ourselves the second pro tip, because when you're traveling, you are told by the airline, show up to the airport like this many hours early. And truth be told, don't listen to the airline all the time. I mean, it's a good starting point, but the truth is some airlines say always show up 3 hours early, and that's them covering themselves, because if you show up late, you lose your ticket. So yeah, my second pro tip is like knowing when to show up for the airport. It's hard, but always be more cautious than more dangerous, because some airports have horrendous security wait times. I think my first flight ever was like 45 minutes in a line, and then I got to go through security. Then my next flight was like 5 minutes, and knowing that like it can take up to an hour through airport security. If it's more than that, the flight usually gets delayed, but it can take up to an hour for airport security. Navigating the airport can take some time, and some flights, especially international ones, try to board like an hour, 40 minutes early. Sometimes they can try and be done. Just keep all that stuff in mind. I would say my pro tip is when you know an airport, like for instance, Frankfurt Terminal 1 always takes a long time to get through in my experience. They're also pretty rough with the security. Terminal 2, really quick to get through because the security is at the gate. Knowing stuff like that, like, for instance, London Stansted in the UK, long time for security. London Heathrow, short time for security. These sorts of in my experiences with similar time flights, for instance. But knowing these things can help you decide how to shop to the airport. And if you don't know, I'd say like 90 minutes for a cheap or domestic flight. 2 hours for like a short range international flight. And if you're going on one of these big 17-hour or 10-hour or 8-hour jaunts to another continent, maybe just show up 2.5 hours early. Like, just add a little bit of extra time, because you'd rather lose half an hour of your life. And in the airport, there's a lot of pleasant things there. They might be overpriced, but there's nice things in most airports, at least internationally speaking. But when it comes to losing half an hour of your life or losing hundreds of dollars, pounds, euros on a ticket, I'll take the half an hour of my life every time, and that is just my pro tip. Like, know when to show up for the airport, and know it's different for each flight and each airport, and if you don't know about those things, just show up a little bit earlier, just in case, because a train to the airport can go wrong, and has gone wrong for me so many times. There can be traffic, there can be all these sorts of things. Just leave a buffer zone in your travel plans, because with flights, they don't wait for you. They just take your money and say, hey, now you need to spend 4 times as much on a ticket, or you lose your whole trip. And that's an awful thing to have happen. So, pro tip, would not recommend that. Next up, the third pro tip here is when it comes to loyalty and miles and stuff. Because when I first got into flying a whole bunch, I mostly flew budget airlines, and every now and then I'd fly a regular airline that's like, hey, so what's your membership program number? I'd be like, I'm not signed up to any membership program. Why would I be? And I didn't even think about it beyond that, but you lose basically cash back when you do this. Every single major airline that's in an alliance, so you're Delta, you're United, you're American if you're in the United States, if you're in the UK, British Airways, if you're in Australia, Qantas, always sign up to their programs and try to sign up to one in each alliance. I know that's complex, but just try and sign. When a website asks you what program are you in, sign up if you haven't already, because when that happens, you're basically offered cash back. It's in the form of airline points, which isn't directly equivalent to cash, but you can often convert it into cash if you want to. But if you don't want to convert it into cash, you can get huge benefits. So, for instance, when you take a $300 flight across the Atlantic twice, so you can get a return, London to New York, like $300, $400, you're also going to get yourself several thousand Avios, which can be worth, 10 to 50 pounds, which you're just throwing away if you don't accept. So always sign up for the program, because it's just throwing away your money otherwise. And if you don't know, I flew first class to Japan using those points I just accrued over the years, also with a credit card, but still, just flying over the years, collected a flight to Japan. If I'd have just kept deciding, no, this is stupid, I'm not going to do it, I would have lost it was a flight to Japan with a friend too, like 2 people, first class to Japan. Imagine not having that because you just were too lazy to sign up for something. It's absurd, like the value you can get from these things. Always sign up to the program. Even if you get bad value from it, it's better than no value. So always sign up for the loyalty program, because if you don't, you just throw away money. And yeah, again, when it comes to travel, a lot of people ask, like, how do you afford to do that, Toycat? Like, wow, you seem like you're flying like every month or something. Yeah, because one, you got to try and like economize it as much as you can. Flights can be expensive, but try and make them as cheap as possible. Travel can be expensive, try and make it as cheap as possible. And one of the best ways is always taking advantage of any rebate you can get, because 10% off a hotel, like I use hotels.com for that. Wow, that's wonderful. Like, how wonderful for that. For instance, getting 3 to 10% back on your flights. Yeah, that's great. I'll take that every time, because eventually that's going to equal a whole nother flight, a whole nother hotel, whole nother anything. Always take the rebate programs when they're offered. Like, I don't... It's just such a basic thing. If you're watching this video, it's an easy mistake to make, but don't make it. Always sign up to a program. If it doesn't have your program, sign up to one of them that's in there. Even if you do it at random, it's better than not doing it. So I have a Virgin Atlantic account. I have a British Airways account. I have a Lufthansa account. I have an Asiana Airlines account, because they're one of the better Star Alliance ones. I have a lot of mileage accounts, and even if I never use them, at least I collected them, but I might use them. So yeah, that's the next tip here. Always collect the miles. The fourth mistake I've made is sometimes underplanning. So I would say underplanning and overplanning are both issues, but to stick to the one that I think most people make the mistake of doing, when it comes to underplanning and just being like, I'll go there and I'll see what happens, this is how you'll miss a lot of the travel-defining experiences. Admittedly, there are some countries where you have a great time anyway. I would say, for instance, Japan. Even if you just wander around, you're going to have a great time if you do that. Like, if you go somewhere really far away for your first time, sure, underplan if you really want to. But I would also say always have at least a couple of things in mind for each day. When you're with a big group, it's easy for someone to say, hey, let's just go to KFC. And he's like, oh, I wonder what it is like here. I had a friend who just went to McDonald's and got a hamburger and fries. Not even like an exciting burger by, UK or US standards. That's what he got every meal when he was in Thailand. So he's like, what shall I do now? I guess McDonald's because I'm hungry. Like, that's a problem you can run across if you underplan. always have like a plan, a thing or two to do each day, a few things you want to do over the week. Even if you want to have a super chill, just like go explore, travel, etc. Always have plans in place for what you want to do, because otherwise you're just going to end up like stuck in the city you flew into, staying at your place and being like, huh, this is nice, and going back in. Looking at stuff and just exploring is great, and you should always leave time, unstructured time, to be like, let's just look around the city today, because you'll find some gems. That's how you find the best stuff, just by randomly exploring. But if you have a week or you have 2 weeks, never underplan to the point where you have nothing going on, because you'll end up doing boring things or repeating things or doing things you didn't really necessarily need to travel to do. And again, it's the whole kind of thing of value. The big guiding principle I always have when I travel is try to get value from what you're doing. It's not about trying to do things for the cheapest or trying to do things that are the nicest. Try to do things that are the perfect mix of both, that hit your, like your price point, also hit your fun point, and that's how you have a good time. So, like if you're in Thailand, because that's my example apparently, have a thing planned of like, try and get a Thai massage. Like I hear they're a thing, better than just being, like just walking around and being like, oh, I guess there's some noodles I could buy, or, actually the McDonald's is great again, and just doing that every single day. You'll have a bad time if you do that. Have things planned, look into it, research, look on YouTube. I recommend when you travel, but always, I would say, plan a fair amount. Don't overplan, don't plan every minute, just have a plan for every day, and you'll have a good time. So the fifth pro tip here is to do with luggage size, because when I've traveled, I've taken bags as small as this on international flights, like literally this size, put some clothes, put some electronics, put some toiletries in there, was done. And I've taken bags this big. This was because I needed to go skiing in Canada, needed some different stuff. But my pro tip here is never overpack. Always try and, like, every single trip, if you're doing it a lot, even if you're not, try and remove things from your luggage. Don't try and add things. Don't think to yourself, what do I need to take? What might I want while I'm there? Think to yourself, what do I need while I'm there? Try and take as little as possible for two reasons. Because the smaller your bag, the easier your airport experience, both in terms of like hassle, but also in terms of cost. The smaller the bag you take, the easier it is. If you have a small bag that fits under the seat in front of you, you always have access to it during the flight. If you have a bag that goes on the carry-on, sure, it goes up there, but you always have theoretical access. On a small plane, you do not have access. But on a big plane, you can take it out, you can check some stuff. And if you have a big checked bag, one, you don't have access to it during the flight. Two, you have to wait at the end of the flight for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, sometimes hours for that bag to arrive. There's a rate of about 1 in 1,000 bags go missing every time. So you're rolling the dice as to whether your bag even makes it. And then also, it costs more money. Never bring a bigger bag than you need. Don't think to yourself, what do I, want? Think to yourself, what do I need to take? Every single trip I try to think like, if I didn't use this, why did I take it? Why did I go through all the effort of carrying this around on me for a week in some cases if I didn't use it a single time? And by doing that, and by more effectively packing clothes, like, okay, thick clothes, try to bring fewer of them. Whereas t-shirts, bring one every day. It's gross not to, at least some people feel gross. Again, that's your own personal standard. But like, same with underwear. Like, pack 7 pairs of underwear. But do you need 7 pairs of shoes? Do you even need 2 pairs of shoes? Oh, well, I mean, like, there's formal situations, there's beach situations, and then there's informal situations. I can't be showing up to a formal situation with informal shoes. Oh, no, that's absurd. Like, try and minimize your packing. I know this is, some places, sure, but the expense, the time, and the effort required for it means that in some cases, especially like checking a bag, like if you have to bring less stuff and buy it there, that can still be cheaper than checking a bag, and it can also mean that you have new clothes to bring home with you. So yeah, try and bring as small a luggage as possible, try and remove things from there, and also never bring a full to the brim luggage. You want to bring some stuff back. You don't want to have to, when you go through security, have to spend 10 minutes getting it back in order. Again, this luggage stressed me because of the zip thing, but it also stressed me because it just wasn't big enough, for the things I had, it didn't fit like quite perfectly because it has rounded corners. It's a whole problem. I hate this luggage is what I'm saying in this whole video. I'm just making this to shame. The name is Bravo, according to this little strap right here. But I'm making this whole video because I hate, just over there, I hate this bag so much. It ruined my life. Don't let it ruin yours. And the easiest way is by not having a luggage bag at all. So that's my 5th pro tip here. Just don't even. So my 6th mistake while traveling would be how you speak to border staff. So when you travel from country to country, unless it's within the EU Schengen area, or unless it's really not really a countries, like when you travel between England and Wales, just offended the Welsh, I'm sorry. But countries within a country, you can obviously not go through immigration checks. But when you travel internationally, you generally go through passport control. And if you're traveling on a visa, or you're traveling on a visa-free waiver like the United States and Canada, and soon to be the EU will ask you for, they can ask you questions when you arrive to make sure that you're being honest about things. And yeah, one of the big mistakes is answering all of their questions 100% honestly. They don't want 100% honesty. They want the correctly worded version of the truth. There's a fact in real life that people don't want the truth. They want what they want to hear, and they want you to show that you can do it. It's like when a teacher asks, like, what's 15 plus 15? They're not like, well, I mean, you know, and you can't just give them 30. They want you working out. They want a specific thing, not the right thing, a specific right thing. Always be aware of that. So for instance, when you go to the US, they get super suspicious, especially if you say you do anything work related. Like, I'm like, oh, I might, you know, I record videos for a living, might record a few videos here, like, thinking that, like, you know, separate things. They're like, oh, so you're here on a work visa. You're trying to steal American jobs? And it's like, no, I meant like separate. And you know, technically speaking, now this channel makes some amount of money. It doesn't make a profit, but it makes money. So it's like, well, that means you're doing business here and you're trying to enter on a leisure visa. I think you'll find that's against the law, sir. Taking our jobs, stamp denied. That happened to a couple of friends at one of the conventions because they said they were YouTubers and they were doing YouTube-related work there. Never say you're working in a country. I mean, like, again, I'm not going to tell you, like, if you are working, don't tell them, but sign up for the right visa type and never try and imply that you're doing work when you're not on a work visa. Every country, the big thing they hate is immigrants that steal their jobs, right? That's the thing around the world, and even if you disagree that that's a real thing, that's what the border staff are there. That's what policies dictate. Policies are like, hey, you can't come in and take, you know, and do a job without doing this paperwork first, and don't ever imply in the slightest you're doing anything job related. Also, when they ask you questions, like, you know, never joke with them, like, so have you been to Iran the last 6 days? Yeah, go there on holiday every year. It's really great. You know, Syria's really great this time of year. No jokes like that. And speaking of that, actually, number 7 would be no jokes in the airport. Obviously, you know, like, you can make, you know, your jokes about, so what's the deal with airplane food? What happens when you cross a kangaroo with a sheep or whatever? You can make those jokes all you like. But when it comes to, like, you know, if they're like, you know, did you pack your bag? Just say yes. When it comes to, you know, like, so, you know, is there any explosive materials in there? Don't say, yeah, I'm the bomb. No. I have made some sarcastic comments sometimes, and in a lot of cultures, sarcasm is not received very well. So yeah, my pro tip here is gonna be, make sure that whatever you do, you don't joke in airports. There is a response they want to hear, and it's not sarcasm, you limey Brit. It's not making jokes. It's not being fun. In most situations, people like people who make jokes. At the airport, that is not a good thing to do. And yeah, you know, I'm not saying that's a personal experience, but I am also saying totally a personal experience that it's gone very badly a couple of times, and I just want to say, don't. There we go. We sorted. My next pro tip number 8, is to do with your valuables. So the truth is, I had made this mistake myself. I had a phone robbed. I also had a bag robbed in 2018. It was a pretty bad year for having things stolen. And I guess my pro tip here is, like, know what a dangerous area is and just avoid them. You know, like, you might think to yourself, like, oh, it'll be really nice to check out, though. I've learned that there are some. So I live in a dangerous area of the UK. If you don't know, my part of town is where everyone likes to avoid because they're like, oh no, that's where bad stuff goes on. So you know, living in this area and going through other areas to get to various different, like, you know, like, because I live in a part of the place that people are like, oh, don't go there. I never trust people when they're like, oh, it's the dodgy part of town or the dodgy part of the city. It's like, whatever. I know how to handle myself in the UK. But knowing how to handle yourself in your country or your city doesn't translate to knowing how to handle yourself on the opposite side of the world. In the Dominican Republic, I was like, okay, there's a really, you know, there's a safe tourist center. I'm here. 10-minute walk through an area that's not recommended. It's a 10-minute walk. What can happen? Your phone can be stolen. And they were armed, so, like, if, well, like, statistically speaking, they were armed, which means that if I hadn't, like, given them, like, if they hadn't stolen my phone, or if I had got it back, because I chased the dude, but he got on a bike, he rode off, and, like, I just lost $900 instantly. But the thing is, like, when that happens, it's disastrous, but also just know, kind of relatedly, like, don't go through bad areas. Like, you might think, like, I know how to handle this. No, even though I know how to handle myself and, like, not be suspicious and not, you know, like, attract attention to myself, being in some areas, being white or being your race is gonna attract attention. Like, how many white people are there in the ghetto parts of Santo Domingo? not very many. They all have expensive things on them because they're tourists, and points like that. You just got to keep that in mind, and there's no amount of blending in you can do in some places. So yeah, keep that in mind. Also, ninth little pro tip here, relatedly, is when someone tries to mug or tries to take your things, I didn't appreciate this at the time, but like the amount of shock afterwards it gave me was horrendous. Like, you know, there's a real, when something's stolen, it like really psychologically hits you. But I think the scary thing to me now, like, sure, if someone gets stolen, it sucks. I think I can deal with it better now. But the scary thing is there are some countries where it's not like your stuff that's at risk, it's your life. Never go anywhere where there's like a real risk of like potential death, you know, from other people. And some people mistake that and be like, well, there's a lot of murders in Chicago, don't go there. Well, no, it's all in one part of Chicago, the South Side, in case you're curious, and it's all gang on gang violence. I'm not in a gang, and you know, like, I'm not the, you know, it's not a danger to me personally to go to Chicago, even though there's 3 gun deaths a day, I think it is these days. But like, there are some places that seem super dangerous, but they're not really. But there are some places that are super dangerous, and just be sure you know which is which. Just be sure you know where tourists and innocents, so Kenya, for instance, the capital, 46, you know, there was a huge tourist, you know, hotel invasion. That's like, okay, that's when you should be scared. Don't be scared because 3 people get shot a day in, I don't know, like this suburb of this place, and just kind of know that when you're going into it. So yeah, my pro tip would be always know what your actual risks are, because sometimes you think you're safe, you're in danger when you're in no danger whatsoever. Sometimes you think you're safe when you're not. Actually, be smarter about that would be my 9th pro tip. So my final pro tip here is honestly one that you can just entirely ignore if you want to, but it's one that will improve your travel, because I used to think, you know, I used to always think like, oh yeah, everyone around the world, it's going to be a whole nightmare. You got to learn every language to every country. What's the point in even going to Bulgaria? I don't speak Bulgarian and it's going to be really hard to pick up. But the truth is you can travel to most countries. I'm going to say over half of the countries, so, you know, over 100 countries in the world, you can easily travel to, and your English will get you around what you want to do just about fine. English is known as, is basically the global language. Every airport I've ever been to, it's like local language, English language. That's just how it works universally. Somehow I was fortunate enough to be born with the ability to speak the language, which most places will have some number of English speakers in. However, always learn a few words of local language. Even if you just learn thank you, hello, etc. It's nice to be able to say them. Like, a lot of people appreciate that. And I think like learning the thank yous, learning some of the culture, learning some of the stuff like that, it will really help you out in the long run. Like, because it feels fun to discover some words you've learned. Like, when I was learning Swedish, going to Sweden was cool because I'd spot like, hey, I can spot this, and I've learned some new things. It's so, one of the cool things about traveling is seeing new languages, is seeing new cultures, etc. And although you don't need to do that, there's no requirement. Just because you're not required to do something, it doesn't mean you shouldn't. So, you know, like, I'm going to Japan, and I'm going to be awful at this, but I'm at least going to learn the basic phrases of, like, hello, goodbye, etc. And, you know, I can say a lot of them off the top of my head, like, wow, konnichiwa, gomen desao. You know, like, I don't know if that second one was correct, actually. I think I got that mixed up with German or something. But, like, you get the point that, like, learning the basics of the language, people appreciate that so much in places. And although there's stereotypes like, oh, in Paris, if you don't say bonjour, they just won't speak to you, it's actually not true. There's a lot of false stereotypes because everyone just accepts that, like, yeah, English is the international language. You can speak to everyone in it, and no one's ever going to be too awful about it. But there are some countries you just can't go to. Like, a lot of parts of South America, without Spanish, what are you going to do? Russia and Ukraine are the 2 major cities I've been to, so Kiev and Moscow. Despite being their capital city, English is not the universal language there. Russian is in both those cases. So when you go to a place like that, just know that the English isn't going to be great. But in the places where you know, like, oh, everyone there will speak English, still know a little bit of the local stuff. So yeah, in Japan, learn a bit of Japanese, enough to say, I don't speak Japanese, could we do English, please? All those sorts of things will really help out. And yeah, that's what I do. That's what I try to do if I'm going on like a trip for a week or 2 or 3, like to Japan, which is what's happening soon. So I just wanted to announce this here. In the next month, I'm going to Japan for like the longest I've ever traveled anywhere at all, and I think I'm going to be vlogging it on this channel. So let me know what you think about the idea of like travel vlogs of Toy Cat. It's been a long time since I've done this, but now we have editors for videos like this one. His name is there on the screen. Thank you, Mr. Guest Editor. But yeah, we've got some guest editors on the channel now, and I think it's been helping improve the quality of that sort of thing, because previously I just like monologue for 2 minutes, and that's what I kind of like, but I also need to have things between that. Hopefully some editors will help me improve that. So travel vlogs from Japan, look forward to them. I really hope, though, that these tips have helped you, because I wish I could tell them to myself, but I can't. But the next best thing I can do is tell them to any of you who travel on any amount of frequent basis, or who just want to. Like, you know, the finance of traveling is something I've been writing a book about for a while. I know it's a whole thing, like an ebook, I should say. But it's something that is a whole thing by itself. But also just the logistics of traveling is something a lot of people miss, and maybe this helps you on that. So before we end the video, let me tell you a little bit about our Lord and Savior, Skillshare. So Skillshare is the all-in-one platform that allows you to actually learn over 10,000 skills. I thought it was over 1,000 skills, and I was like, that's pretty good. No, it's 26,000 separate skills. And yeah, the crazy thing about Skillshare is they have all of these different courses you can learn. And the great thing about the website, because I use it personally, is you just go on there and you're going to learn a thing. I've learned about procrastination on there and how to avoid that, for instance. I've learned about all these different things that you can do on Skillshare, and I like Skillshare as a concept because every time you go on there, you're going to learn something. You can do it in small bite-sized chunks, you can learn at your own pace, and the best bit about Skillshare, because it is usually a paid service, is I can give you access to Skillshare Premium, 2 months of it, for absolutely free. All you have to do is click the link in the top of the description. I know you've probably heard about Skillshare from somewhere else already, and you're like, wow, Toycat's doing this again, but I would recommend you sign up if you haven't already, because of the fact that if you sign up, it sends a good message to Skillshare that like, oh yeah, we like this Toycat guy, and it allows more of these sponsored videos like this one to happen, because, again, I've shown off how YouTube ad revenue works. This allows me to do more cool things, like those vlogs from Japan, because, again, this sponsorship, for instance, is paying for the rail pass I'll be talking about. It's super cool. You'll see that in a later video, but I like doing the sponsorships because they allow me to do cooler things on the channel, and signing up for Skillshare is the best way to show them that you do appreciate them doing this for me to allow me to do this for you, because it's like a nice little triangular relationship which you can make possible by signing up at the link in the description. Thank you very much for watching this video on the internet. I hope you all enjoyed it, because as always, second channel, don't care. Goodbye. I hate this suitcase so much. It's awful. Goodbye.